Welcome to Marketing Made Simple TV. I'm Jeff Ogden, the host of the show, and we're thrilled to have you back once again for another great show. And we've got a fun guest today. Bill Blaney is the Senior Creative Director of Cameron Advertising, and he's also the President of Good Soup Marketing, Inc. He's a marketing expert, creative lead, and a social media strategist whose client lists include companies like Canon, JP Morgan Chase, and Capital One Bank. He's also the founder of HDCameraGuide.com, which is one of the top sites for professional photographers. And before we welcome him on the show, I want to tell you about this great book, which is B2B from A to Z, Marketing Tools and Strategies to Generate Leads for Your B2B Company by Bill Blaney. Let's welcome Bill to the show. Hey, Bill.
How you doing? How are you?
I'm doing good. Yeah, glad to have you on the show, and I enjoyed your book. I'll start you off with the question I ask every guest on the show, and it's really simple. Who are you and what do you...
It's a question I ask myself every single day. I'm a creative director and digital strategist for Cameron Advertising, which is a full-service marketing agency. I've been in marketing for a little over 20 years, and I've handled everything from digital to social to promotion to about every little aspect you could name. I've worked for, had clients that were big companies such as Canon, JP Morgan Chase, as you mentioned, NBC, Showtime, as well as a whole host of companies, business to business and business to consumer, that you may not have known, but we've done our best to make sure that their space knows them and that their clientele knows them.
Good, and having read your book, I was looking forward to have you on the show, and you're local to me, too, which most of the guests aren't, so we have another Long Island boy here, which is good. Now, one of the topics you talk about in your book, in fact, you have a chapter about this, is how much B2B marketing has changed. Talk to us about that. How has business-to-business marketing changed over?
To business, I mean, just like all of marketing. I mean, really, if you look at the past 10 years, all of it's changed dramatically. I think, you know, a good portion of this has to do with the fact that we have many more media channels now. We have the internet. We have people going onto their iPhones and their iPads to try to find content to learn about companies. So the whole design of how we all used to do marketing long ago, where it was, you know, print ads and commercials and radio, and maybe newspapers and a few other things, even trade channels, it's all changed. I mean, a lot of those channels are still there, but but when somebody creates a marketing budget today, when a company does, a lot of them are sort of moving a lot of their marketing dollars over to digital, to social, and more of the places where they're going to find their audience.
Interesting, Bill, because I actually have a degree in marketing that was a long time ago, and the world was a lot simpler when I got that degree, so yes.
Now, when I started, it was simple.
It was. You had 3 networks on TV, right? You had a couple newspapers, you had billboards, and you had print, and that was it. That's all you had. So
that was the sum total.
It was a very simple world. Now, another thing you talked in the book, which was a fun chapter, are the myths around B2B marketing. Things people believe, but they're really not true. So why don't you share some of those with us?
I put, I think it was about 10 myths. You write a book, you don't remember everything that you got in there, but I'll start with the first one. The first one is the myth that for companies that you don't have to go out and sell your products, that your products are almost pre-sold because of your brand. And I think this is something that you find in big brand name companies. And the reason that you do, the reason that you find in larger companies, this idea that in a big brand company, which may have several different products in several different categories, a few that are well known and others that may not be, that there's this idea that because the brand name is attached to it, that automatically that audience is familiar with this product or service. And that's not always the case. I mean, sometimes you have a terrific product that's created by a company and it's well known all over the world, but that company may have products in a different area. Maybe it's security, maybe it's education, and they're not as well known, and their competition is known a little better. So I think this is something that tends to happen in the bubble of big successful companies. They sometimes need to address the fact that you're going to have to market in categories that maybe you didn't think you had to before. and you're going to have to be aggressive against competition that's been there for a long, long time before you got there, or maybe is more well known than you are. So I think that's one of the things that are, that I discuss when it comes to myths. Another one is the fact that, where I say the internet has changed everything. That's kind of a myth. It has changed everything if you're a business-to-consumer company. It's changed everything if you're catering to the 18 to 25 or even 18 to 30 crowd. But when it comes to business companies, that's not necessarily the case. And the reason being is because sometimes you're dealing with companies that are making purchases in bulk. You're dealing with purchasing agents, or people within the company that have to be responsible for your product or service, and they're not 18 to 25-year-olds. They may be 45 to 60-year-olds. And these are people who are comfortable with things the way they used to be. They go on the internet, they'll go on Facebook, and they'll use a lot of these things for social purposes, but when it comes to actually looking for business, sometimes they do things the way that they always did before. This is, of course, always going to change, but business to business is always a little bit behind the trends when it comes to consumer anyway. Another myth that I have in there is that ROI, return on investment, happens right away. And it doesn't necessarily happen right away with marketing. And I think this is something that companies that don't do a lot of marketing need to be aware of, is that a simple ad or a banner ad or a promotion alone isn't necessarily going to saturate your market and make sure that everybody that you want to reach is going to find you. It's an issue of repetition. Brand is repetition. Assume this. You create an ad, you're creating one impression. You create a brand, it's multiple impressions. And it's the multiple impressions that really are going to drive people to you and remember you in the long run.
I like that, Bill, because I think the consistency of what you do in marketing just matters so much that too many give up way too soon. And that's also a thing with like blogging. People give up too soon. I've been blogging for 7.5 years, so you got to stick with it and stay for a long time. I want to ask you about a specific myth that you have in here, and it's myth number 7. And the title of the myth is "Marketing Agencies Aren't Needed. We can do it all in-house." Why do you think is that a myth, and why should people reach out to outside companies?
I think it's a myth in this sense, and I find this all the time. About half of the companies that my agency deals with are companies that have used either other marketing agencies, or they've tried to do a lot of the work in-house, or they've used sort of graphic designers and social marketing people a la carte. And I think the thing that you miss with that is the fact that there isn't a lot of sort of cohesiveness between all of these elements. The social marketing may be talking about something else and have a completely different message from what your ads have. Or maybe that's a different message from what your collateral material has, or even the videos that you have. I think what you get with a marketing agency, and this is also, it's very pertinent when it comes to companies that have several different products and also several different product managers, because a lot of times in big companies, different product managers have different agencies they go to. And what you see a lot of different products with completely different looks and messaging. What you get from an agency, and it's not necessarily an agency, but it's anybody who can be a consultant and pull all these elements together, is that you get a consistency. You know that when you're putting material out there, there is that brand repetition. You know how everything works together, and I mean that's more important today than anything else. It's very, very important that whether it's content marketing, whether it's ads that happen to show up digitally, or even in the few trade channels that exist that that are print, whether it's in a trade show, that people are getting that same message. It may be different products, it may be different little messaging within that, but you want to make sure that people look at your brand and there is a cohesiveness to everything, so that you feel like a large company that really kind of has it together. And that you don't necessarily get that when you do everything sort of a la carte.
That's a good point, that companies have to have a consistent experience when you deal with a company, and I think that's more important than ever. One of the things I enjoyed about your book, Bill, is you don't pull any punches. And one of the things I enjoyed is what you had to say about B2B advertising. You're rather critical. And I hate TV ads. I hate Flo from Progressive. I hate all the car ads on TV. I mean, they're just obnoxious. Why did you write what you did?
I think as far as the whole issue of pulling no punches, I mean, we're here in New York. You know, you deal with people who generally speak their mind. And I guess that was it's part of that, and it's also part of the fact that a lot of the books that I picked up on marketing, be it social or business or whatever it may be, you know, the messaging isn't very clear from them. You know, a lot of times you'll get the idea that you know, it's like we're going to talk about social marketing and you have to go out and do this and do that, but nobody's really talking about what really happens after you do that. I mean, it's great to create a blog, but once again, like you pointed out, you have to be consistent with it. You have to continue doing it. It's not 1, 2, or 3 blog posts you do. You have to constantly be at this, and you have to be thinking about it. And you know, when it comes to business companies, yeah, there's a lot of things that they take for granted. You know, a lot of companies are unaware of how they appear. They think that, you know, once again, they think that you know, that marketing may not work for them. And I'll tell you, there are companies out there where marketing does not work for them because they have a very particular market and they have a few people they have to reach out to, and that's terrific. But if they want to expand, and if they want to gain awareness in places where they haven't been, then yes, they're going to have to do some kind of marketing somewhere. I've had companies in the past that have even said that, says, well, we don't really do a lot of this, and we don't think it works. But yet, by the same token, he would put ads in trade publications that were necessary. He sent out letters and newsletters to people, and he didn't realize that this was, you know, this was sort of a content marketing push. So I think it comes down to having good awareness of where you need marketing and where you don't. And a lot of business companies, they've done terrifically well, and they continue doing a lot of the same things. And I think really, especially now, when everything's changed, and people are finding their services and their products and, you know, companies they're going to use within their business-to-business space in completely different media venues. It's enormously important for companies to sort of do a refresh and figure out what they have to do to keep themselves relevant.
That's good. I'll just give you one example of the limited value of advertising. I was in a Best Buy the other day, and a guy was shopping for a laptop computer, and he pulled out his smartphone, and he went to PCMagazine.com, and he looked at the reviews right on his the smartphone while he was standing in front of this computer. What TV ad would have sold him on this particular computer? He's got information at his fingertips to make a decision. He doesn't have to rely on ads. That's the world we live in today. What's that?
That's true. I will make this point, though. I a consumer, it's an absolute must, and you have to be on the web, and people do pay attention to all of that. I think when it comes down to B2B, there's an extra little element there that you can't really ignore. And if you look at it this way, I mean, business to consumer marketing is very much about feeding wants. You know, it's about impulses. It's about buying something for you, you know, something that makes you feel better. And even if it doesn't make you feel better, it's something that you feel you want and have to have at that moment. When you're talking about B2B, you're feeding needs. And needs are returns on investment. Needs are products and services that you have to have in order for your company to function properly. And the business hat that people put on in that situation is completely different from what they would put on buying something for themselves. And yes, they do need to see what the reviews are on things, but sometimes those reviews will be in the form of a case study or of a white paper, which is a little more detailed. And those case studies and white papers may not find themselves in comment areas, and may not be something that's as valid for somebody who's buying something in bulk as it would be for a customer who's going and looking for a camera. So, you know, once again, there are digital spaces, and I'll tell you, in terms of social marketing for business, Twitter, LinkedIn, Flickr, SlideShare particularly, especially if you want to get information out there. YouTube, which you can't ignore, Vimeo. All of these channels are totally useful for B2B. and a lot of them are doing it. And then you have to go out and you have to push this information. But it is a little bit of a different positioning than when you're going after a consumer market.
Good point. One other thing I want to talk about, you talked a lot in your book, and I wrote a blog article about this, and I appreciate it, was the need for a marketing plan. It's something you said that a lot of companies don't do, but it's really important. Let's talk about the marketing plan and why people need it, and why don't most people do it?
I think the reason most people don't do it is because a lot of companies, once again, you have companies that sort of float into marketing in different ways. There's no real defined plan of how they're going to do outreach. There's a few things that they do that they know work for them. And when it comes to expanding on that, a lot of people just do it the way that they think is best to do it. With larger companies, more institutional companies, usually there's a lot of media and a lot of saturation that you have to address over the course of a year or even a quarter. And as a result, most larger companies put together a marketing plan. Now, in sort of short term, the marketing plan is, it's a plan on who your company is, what your competition is, how you see yourself in the market, what areas of the market do you think you've penetrated, what ones you haven't penetrated, what media do you think it's important for you to address based on 2013 as opposed to 2012, and how are you going to budget for that media? Where are you going to put your little buckets of what you need to do? And I mean, let's put it this way, even if this is something that you don't follow 100%, it's just like writing down a thought on paper. The minute you put it down, it makes you think about it. It gives you an idea of how you need to structure this. And there will always be things that come in. I mean, one good example is, I have in the book, was presented by David Meerman Scott. And he is a style of doing public relations, which is called newsjacking. Where, for example, and this is appropriate for some companies that have placement in the media. Let's say you have an electronics or a software company that comes out in the news. Maybe there's something new that they've done, and you know that this news item has just come up. What you may want to do is put out a press release right away, because people are going to be writing about this if it's important. And what you want to do is get that second paragraph in the articles that are going to come up. Now, that's the kind of strategy that you can't really plan for, but everything else around it you can. So, you may want to plan for saturation in, particular publications in terms of banner advertising you might want to do, in terms of trying to get articles in these publications, or in terms of just simply going in and talking to your audience. You're going to want to decide what trade shows, and there's a lot of businesses where trade shows, at least for these particular businesses, work particularly well. There's a lot of them where the trade shows have, completely gone south. And, much like a lot of the publications, we don't see a lot of advertising in them anymore. But this depends on the company, it depends on the category. And, if you're going to really think about what you want to do in terms of marketing, you really have to have a sober assessment of who you are in the category that you want to be in, who you could be in the category that you could be in the future. And so you really have to think it out. That's kind of
good. I'm glad you mentioned David Meerman Scott and newsjacking. He's going to be a guest on this show, and I did a podcast recently with him on newsjacking. So it was interesting. David and I know each other quite well. It's been a really fascinating conversation. I wish we had more time to talk, but I know people are going to want to learn more about you and what you do in your book. So where do you recommend that they go to learn more about you?
You can find me simply by going to Google. Type in Bill Blaney or type in B2B A to Z. And you'll find reviews. You'll find a listing on Amazon.com. You can purchase the book there. You can purchase it online at Barnes & Noble. You can get it in both paperback, hardcover, and Kindle or iPad format. You want to learn about me? My LinkedIn profile is right up there. And that's probably the best way to do it. Just go onto Google, type my name in, type my book's name in, and you're going to find out a lot about it.
I want to thank Bill Blaney for being a guest on the show, and I want to put a plug in for his book. It is called B2B A to Z, Marketing Tools and Strategies that Generate Leads for a Business-to-Business Company. And he's got a quote from David Merman Scott there, right there. If you want to grow your business, you need to adopt the strategies Bill outlines in this book. So check out this book on Amazon, whatever. As he said, it's on Kindle, it's on iPad. If you want it electronic, whatever, check out the book. Before we go, we want to thank our sponsors because they do a wonderful job for us. Avatage is a content marketing company up in the Boston area, do great video content. Digital Ethos is now replaced by Social Media Club, a much larger organization. Communication Strategy Group, which is also brand telling, and Eloqua, a large revenue performance management company. We also want to thank Social Ribbit, R-I-B-B-I-T, socialribbit.com, who helps us a lot with the show, our executive producers company. And lastly, we want to thank Watchitoo, who provides this wonderful platform we use to create our TV on the Web show. Marketing Made Simple TV premieres every Thursday at noon Eastern, 9 Pacific. So until next week, we'll see you next time on Marketing Made Simple TV.